Good evening and welcome to an Always Press Record Productions. Tonight we have the premiere episode of The Short Box. We're sitting here with Scott from ComicSpec.com. Before we get into all this tonight, we're going to give a couple shout outs. We have PowerHits281.com streaming all of our content, all of our other podcasts. Be sure to check them out. I believe Scott has Instagram, Facebook.
Oh yeah, you can check us out on Instagram at We Buy Comics or Facebook at We Buy Comic Books.
I like that, nice and easy. You know what you're trying to get into when you go to those handles there. So we have a very special topic of conversation that we're going to get into today. So by the name of it, Comic Spec, right? We're talking about speculation of comics, right? So, Scott, why don't you go ahead and get into what Comic Spec is?
ComicSpec.com is an online resource that's geared towards the speculator. It gives you everything that you need to know in order to flip a book and make some money.
Wait a second. Did you say we're going to talk about making money with comics?
We're going to be talking about making money with comics. What other best way can you make money except for with something that you love?
You know, there's 5 million ways to make money, and I'm just trying to find one that makes me smile. I feel like this one is one of those things.
I assure you we will make you smile.
Well, let's do this. Let's talk about some money. So, when you're talking about speculating for comics, what are some of the things that you're looking for as a key indicator of something that you want to be buying?
I like to look at sales trends. One of the things that I love to look at more than anything else is recent sales.
So, data, right?
Data's key.
An informed decision is always a good decision. So for the layperson like me who, you know, just dabbles in comics more of a hobby, how would I be able to get data, get my hands on this data to even know what I was looking for?
Well, you know, the first thing that you got to look for is news. What's happening in the world of comic books? And let's face it, today more money is being made and put into comics than any other time in history.
That is very true, and there's a lot of big news in the comic world. I think we should actually take a time out here to recognize the comic world lost somebody very important. And I know for me personally, I was overcome with emotion when I first found out about Stan Lee's passing. So what does something like that do to the speculation side of comic collecting?
Oh, man. You know, Stan Lee had such an impact on every aspect of comics. The news of him dying, people automatically went to find books that had Stan Lee in there.
I know one of the first things I did when I found out was I hit eBay just to see what was available. And I will say, there was a lot of stuff that became available real quick.
I was amazed. I don't know if people realize this or not, but our site, ComicSpec.com, actually monitors eBay sales. I have to process books every single day from the sales from the prior day.
Wow.
Yesterday, we had, no lie, over 500 yellow labels sold that were signed by Stan Lee.
So a yellow label we're talking about is a CGC certified, so a certified authentic autograph of Stan Lee.
That is correct. A yellow label basically means that it's an authorized witness saw the person sign the book. So all of these books, somebody physically watched Stan Lee sign.
Signed and verified. That's amazing. And so, you know, I don't want to necessarily derail the conversation, but is there a way you can see those statistics of what was really moved? I mean, I think that would be very interesting to know.
There is. I have not actually publicized that information as of yet.
Fair enough.
But that is on my hit list for this week.
Let me ask you this. How do you gather that data?
Oh, man, what a great question. I utilize, my background as a programmer.
Interesting. So you use technology.
I love technology. It's your friend. My first job in the IT world was a webmaster at an internet service provider. This is back in 1995. So the very first thing I was tasked with was to make a search engine, because at the time Google wasn't giving out their search results. So everybody was making their own search engines.
Wow.
So I had to make a spider. So using that same technology today, And I have a spider that goes to eBay every single day and collects all the sales of CGC books and then normalizes the data and stuffs it into a database so then I can run reports against it.
That is impressive. So, look, that's very similar to what I think any investor or anyone trying to make an informed decision does. So, I think it's important to note that when you do visit comicspec.com and you are looking at the trends, you're getting true statistical analysis of what is actually happening in the market real time. That's impressive.
That is correct. Now, we also interface with news. So we have a news feature that allows people to share news with other users. So what's great about that is we don't only take the news, we then categorize the news. What is this article about? To which then you can see today, top story, guess what? Stan Lee.
Oh, wow.
You'd never believe
Look
it.
at that. 73 articles written about Stan Lee.
In the last 5 days, and really that number's been in the last 1 day. But what's really cool about this is I actually go through and look. Let's see what books actually have Stan Lee in there.
Oh, wow.
So you can not only see the news, you can see the books that relate to the news. Now this gives you the ability to really kind of focus in on what you want to get or what you want to buy. Today, obviously, everybody's buying the Marvel Age 41. Why? Because Stan Lee's on the cover of it. It's the most popular book that has him on the cover. Now, of course, that's not the only book that's out there. Fantastic Four, believe it or not, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby appeared in it.
In the actual story, wow.
So we actually go through...
So this is something to note here, too. So on the site, when somebody's looking at the information, you actually put in there what makes that specific...
title relate to the subject matter.
Yeah. What makes it a key, what makes it important. So you know when you're looking at it, why it's relevant and why you want to be buying it.
That's correct.
Man, this really is an easy button. I like it.
The idea was to give something that I would use to other people. I've been using, this site has been around for literally 2 years. I started it in February of 2016. The app launched in February of 2017 on Android, and at some point in time, I'm going to launch it for iOS app as well. I just haven't gotten around to doing that yet.
Wow, that's truly impressive work. Work with the site and with the capabilities of searching and normalizing that data. When did you think of this as an idea of something that people could leverage?
Well, it started off as what I was using on my personal stuff. So I used to do it all for myself, and a friend of mine said, "Scott, how do you know all of this?" I said, "Well, I got a database." "What do you mean you have a database?" I said, "Well, I have a database of all the books that I own."
Only an IT person would say that so matter-of-factly. Well, I have a database, of course.
Well, don't you?
I do, but I'm also in IT, so that's not a fair question.
So, my friend looked at me and he says, "Scott, people will pay you to see this information. You have an ungodly amount of information." Now, of course, I didn't realize how much information I had that other people didn't, because to me it was just second nature. It was what I did. So my friend Trey said, "Scott, you've got to put this out. I want to know how many books are selling this week. I want to know this information." So he was really the guy that said, "Put this online and do it now."
Wow. Well, I appreciate that advice that he gave you, because I do leverage this as well. So let's talk about membership on the site. So you have a couple different levels. There is a free level, but you also have a premium level as well. What comes with that? What makes them unique?
Well, the free membership really gives you all the information that you need to make a short-term decision.
Okay.
I mean, it gives you 90 days of sales. It gives you access to news. The premium edition lets you put in your comic books, so you can actually track the value of your books.
Oh, wow.
Which comes in really handy if you're like me and you go, "God, how much money am I spending on comic books?" Or you have a wife
that can't get out of hand quickly.
Or you have a wife that says, "How much money are you spending, and why do you want to spend all this cash on there?" So I like to show, well, here's how much money I've put in, and here's how much money I can get back based on real sales.
Wow.
So this is actually my comic stuff. I have quite a few books in there, but I have basically 5 grand invested. Based on the comps, they'll sell for around 18,000. So I got about a $12,000 return on my investment.
That is truly impressive.
Well,
Look, I mean, don't take that for granted, right? So, in the finance industry, I think there are stockbrokers all over Wall Street that would love to make these kind of returns on people's money.
it's amazing to me the amount of return that you can get when you make an informed decision.
Absolutely.
Now, I try to tell people all the time I'm a short term investor. Everybody has different ways that they invest, different things that they like to do. I am a short term investor. I look for sales trends, things that I think are going to, in the next 90 days, go up in value.
What would make something go up over 90 days, and what type of return are you looking for percentage wise?
I like to at least get 30% on anything. That's my minimum. Ideally, you get a little bit.
That's pretty strong.
Ideally, you can get a little bit more. Now, I like to use Miss Marvel as a great example of a book. I don't know if you guys realize this, but in 2012, you could buy a 9/8 copy of this for $600.
Oh, wow.
$600 had you had a clue Marvel Universe was going to come out with a movie. Now, literally in 2013, Marvel said, hey, we're going to use Captain Marvel, and it's going to be based on Miss Marvel. Instantly, that book jumped to $1,500. Like literally overnight, and that was just them saying the announcement at San Diego.
Wow.
Now, what makes this a really fun book is how much you can make overnight. So if you purchase this book in August, you could buy it for around $2,100. If you waited, knowing when that at some point in time they're going to have a trailer for this movie, and you put that book up for sale on the day that that trailer comes out, you will make money. So in this case, in August, you could buy it for $2,200. On 9/17, September 17th, trailer hit. Look at how much money that jumped up to.
Wow.
$32.75.
Wow.
All because a trailer hit. And that's not just one sale. After that, they had several. Now, as you can
see, a couple weeks. That's not even a few months. That's a couple weeks.
That's the type of return that I like to see.
I mean, it feels like an illegal flip kind of profit. That doesn't feel like it should be legal, right? I mean,
it's easy money, and it's all based on sales trends.
That's insane. So, I have a Miss Marvel #1. Mine is not a 9.8, but mine is signed by every single person who's worked on the book.
See, now that's a great book to have. That instantly jumps up in price. Now, for instance, I don't know if you've taken a look and saw what that looks like, but let's just for giggles look at the difference between a blue label and a yellow label, just so you can kind of get an idea.
And again, explain the difference between a blue label and a yellow label.
Now, blue label is just simply a graded book. Nobody's signed it. Nobody's done anything. It is its book in its purest form, sent to CGC, and they grade it and tell you what grade it is.
Now, these graded books, just so people understand, these come back in a hard case, and you're not reading this thing ever again, correct?
You will not open this book ever again.
So it truly becomes art at that point.
I agree with that statement, 100%.
Okay.
Now,
well, I can justify paying. Well, I don't know if I could justify, but I could see myself one day paying $5,000 for a Warhol, but it having the Incredible Hulk on it, right?
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It would be like having one of those little tomato can boxes that he was selling. Like that thing sold for like $20 million or something crazy, right? And it was just a pasta Barilla box or something.
Just all it was a Campbell soup can. Yeah.
Is that what it was? A Campbell soup? Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
They made big money on that. Now back to what we were talking about, the difference between a blue label and a yellow label, the cash flow wise. $4,500. Look at the date on there. Right around the time, right before the trailer dropped. You can see it went from $3,300 to $4,500.
Wow, so it's almost twice the value for the yellow label than it is for the blue label.
People will pay a premium for a signed edition.
Now, does this take into account who signed it? Because I know multiple people work on a book, right? Someone does the story, someone does the art, someone does the cover itself, right? And Some people are more important than others.
That is correct. This one in particular for 4500 was signed by the entire creative team, including and also added Stan Lee to it.
Oh, so this is like the grail of signed books.
That is for Miss Marvel.
For this specific book.
For Miss Marvel, that is 100% accurate.
It's a 9.8. Everyone who worked on it and the editor.
That is correct. And it came back $4,500 somebody paid, and I guarantee you when the movie comes out, somebody will pay more than that.
I'm kind of jealous. So it's only been available for 2 days, and there's already 6 people watching it?
No, it was up for 6 days. It was a best offer, and somebody made
someone snatched it up.
Yep. So it was buy it now.
This is sales history.
That is correct.
The transaction is complete. Interesting. I like this.
And if you want, you can go through and actually look at...
If you had all the data, what would you do?
It's amazing to me the dollar amounts that you can get and the premium that you can put on a signature.
Absolutely.
Now, granted, you only get that premium if it's witnessed or authenticated. So if you have a book that's just randomly signed by somebody, you will not get that premium price. And that's what some people don't understand. They say, hey, I have this book and it's signed by Stan Lee. Well, that's great, but how do I know that it was truly signed by him?
Right, it can't be authenticated.
That's true. Now, you can send it into CBCS, and they will red label it. Now, a red label is basically they go and they look at the signature, and they compare it to known signatures, kind of like a Beckett. Now, going back to Miss Marvel and speculating on it, people always ask, well, Scott, how do you know when to sell? How do you know when to buy? I mean, these are the questions that everybody asks.
That's the question.
So I always tell people you have to pay attention to sales trends, and the only way that you can pay attention to sales trends is to actually look at them. So in which case, what I do is I take all the sales and I like to put them onto a trend chart. Now, what a trend chart is it plots the sales, then uses a nice little mathematical formula and bases that on, creates a line. The horizontal line is either going up or it's going down. Generally speaking, if the line's going up, you're holding that book. Hold that book until that line starts to dip. As soon as that line starts to dip, you need to get out of the book. On the flip side of that, when do you buy? You look at the trend chart. If the book is trending down, it's a good time to buy if you have faith in the book. Great example of that, New Mutants 98. Everybody knows New Mutants 98.
That is the first appearance of Wade Wilson, also known as Deadpool. Everybody wants anything to do with Deadpool right now. He's hot.
He's hot, and not to mention they're being released in for a Christmas edition. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but they're recut Deadpool 2.
Really?
They have Fred Savage, and it's going to be kind of like a Princess Bride.
Oh,
it's funny. Like 12 Days of Deadpool.
That's funny. 12 Days of Deadpool, I like it.
So now that's a book that'll rebound real quick. So it went down in value. When Deadpool first came out, you could buy it for about $1,000. Went up to about $1,200. After the movie, when all the marketing died down, it dropped down to as low as $450.
Wow.
That book right now is back up to $800. When the next movie comes up, it'll go back up.
Interesting. Okay. So this trend line is available on your site, right?
Oh, of course. For every book sales that we have, we allow you to look at all the charts for them. That includes a trend line and a ripple chart as well.
And if I want to see that historical data, that would come in the premium package. What does it cost to get in on that premium package?
$3.99 a month, the cost of one Marvel comic book.
Wow. Why do I feel like that's less than a cup of coffee? But I don't want to make it sound like we're feeding anybody here. But that's so cheap to get this kind of return on investment. I mean, if it could turn $5 a month and a $5,000 investment into $18,000, I mean, I think it's
worthwhile.
It's worth the investment in yourself, right? And again, phenomenal job on the tech. Great job of putting it all together in a nice, easily consumable format. I'll tell you what, why don't we take this opportunity to take a segue here. We're going to go ahead and take a few minutes for our sponsors, and when we get back, we're going to get into some of the pitfalls of bad decisions. All right, welcome back to the Short Box. We're here still with Scott from ComicSpec.com, and we were going to get into some of the potential pitfalls of movie speculation. But I think before we do that, I think we should do a little bit of show and tell. I see we have some eye candy here on the shelf that I want to talk about. What do you got here for us?
Oh, I did bring a couple books. Seeing how Stan recently passed, I figured it'd be a good time to show off a couple books that I had signed by Stan. Maybe tell you a little story about how I ended up with it. This is my nice X-Men #1. You'll see it's a nice CGC. It's a 2.5. It was signed in 2012, which was, seems like ages ago. This is probably one of the only books that I've kept this long. Like I said, I usually sell books pretty quick, no longer than keeping them for about a year. But this is one that was in my personal collection. It was a Grail that I had to have growing up, and as soon as I made enough money to buy it, I bought it. I bought it raw. I got it graded originally as a blue label. I then saw Stan at Dallas Fan Expo in 2012. I took my two kids, Ashton and Sophie, with me.
That's fantastic. What an experience.
It was great. I didn't have too many opportunities to meet Stan, but that was the one time that I did. I turned in probably 12 books at that show.
Wow.
So luckily at the time he was only charging $75, which now seems like a bargain.
It is. Last year I got something signed at one of his last signings. It cost me $200.
Now at the same time, I did also grab a Hulk 181, which for whatever reason I didn't bring it with me, but I also did get a Hulk 182 signed.
Oh, okay.
Which is actually the third appearance of Wolverine. It's a cameo, one little thing, and then he flies off. But it's a great book. You would not believe how much I'm into this book for.
Do we care to speculate?
I'm $125 into this book.
Wow.
It will sell most likely right now for probably $700.
Wow.
So
that's a nice profit if you realize that.
Oh, I believe if I sell it, it would go pretty quick. At least at $6.99, especially today.
That's true. Today is a little different buying atmosphere. A little bit of a frenzied atmosphere, if you will.
Now I noticed you got a couple of books with you.
I did bring a couple things. So first of all, this is the book that I had signed this past year. It was signed in April. Both Stan Lee and John Romita, who both worked on this book. It is a key issue of Spider-Man. It is the first full appearance of Mary Jane Watson, who everybody knows Spider-Man has a long, sordid love history with between her and Gwen Stacy.
I'm a MJ fan myself.
I bought this ungraded, and I had it pressed, which is a process. I don't know, Scott, if you want to explain what that is.
Press is a really great way to increase the value of your book. Essentially, over time, older books can be damaged. They can have warps. They can have ripples, minor water damage. All these things can be fixed with a little bit of humidity and a little bit of pressure and heat. Now, essentially, what we do is we take the book, we stick it into a press, flatten it out. It'll smooth out the warps, basically make it a better presented book. It can't take out color breaks and those types of things, but essentially it can flatten a book, take out creases, take out some minor ticks. Anything that doesn't break color can usually be fixed.
It sounds very similar to dry cleaning to me.
It is. Now, I will say that there are different levels of pressers. Every book is a little bit different. Books that are more modern are a little bit more sensitive to the pressing process.
Does it usually tend to improve the grade of a book?
It will usually jump the grade of a book depending on the flaws. But generally speaking, if there's no color breaks and it's a 8.0, you can at least get it up to a 9.
Oh, that's a pretty good little jump. I know when you're looking at the value and the sales data, the higher the grade, the better. So anytime you can jump up a full point, that's well worth the price of it.
I agree with this.
Question: what does it generally cost to press a book?
Oh, it depends on where you go. I always tell people, find somebody local to press your books.
Find somebody local. I do know that the grading companies also will press your books as part of the grading process. Do you recommend to have CGC do it?
CGC has a company called CCS.
So they don't do it on site themselves?
They are actually in the same place.
Okay.
They're all in Florida. You send it to them, and they are the authorized presser, which means if you have a yellow label book, a normal presser cannot open up this book and press it for you.
Oh.
Only a CGC licensed person can do that.
Now, I had this press before I got the autographs on it. An interesting story about this one is the plan was to just get John Romita signature on it, and at the last minute, Stan Lee became available. And so it was by pure chance and fluke that I even got this thing autographed by Stan Lee. But again, in light of recent news, I'm very, very happy that I did. So the other thing that I brought, and I just wanted to kind of be able to illustrate the difference between a raw copy of a book and a graded copy of a book. This is the same book. It's Wolverine #1. One of them cost me about $30, the raw one, and the other one cost me about $130. And so while it's probably not something that I will do frequently, buy the book already graded and then raw as well. I would buy one or the other. I like this one, and I wanted my kid to be able to actually turn the pages and read Wolverine because he's one of my favorite people on Earth. I cried when Logan died in Logan.
And that's a great storyline. That's the Patch storyline, which was really fun to read. So if you are going to read a Wolverine, I'd suggest the limited series and then go into the first 12 issues of his regular series.
Okay. I like that. I like that.
There's some other things on this book that is kind of interesting spec-wise.
Okay.
That you probably need to explain a little. Why this one's worth 130 and this one's worth 30 isn't just because it's graded, it's because of the condition of it. This one is pristine. It has at most 2 flaws, which is why we ended up with our 9.8 grade. This guy right here, he's probably closer to a 7.5, maybe a 7.
No, but what you guys don't realize at home is that we already talked about this book, and he's going to press this one for me.
So we're going to jump this guy up. I think we can probably make it into a 9, make it at least a nice presentable.
Look, I'm not going to hold you to that, but I will get it graded just so that we can show what kind of difference it can make. Because honestly, people, probably the number one factor into the value of the book is the grade.
The condition is everything in there. Other thing that's really important about this book is it's a news label.
Oh, yes.
Now,
so, yeah, you guys got to see this one. It never hit a newsstand. There is no UPC code. Whereas this one here hit the newsstand. Someone had to scan that in order to purchase it.
This was at a local 7-Eleven, most likely on an old school spinner rack. And for those who are too young to know, a spinner rack is essentially a circular rack that you would spin around to see what books were on that rack so you could find it. The problem is, by doing that, people would put their hands right here, spin it. It would get dented. Other things, it would come in 5. Spinner rack would hold 5 of this book all in a row. So what do comic book people do? They look for the best one. So how do they do that? They flip it with their fingers like this, kind of like you would run through a short box. What that does is it causes these nice little things called finger bends. So as a result, finding one of these guys, a newsstand in high grade, is a much more desirable book than a direct edition because they're very hard to find.
Increases the rarity.
And increases the value.
So I don't know that I'm sad that mine is particularly a direct mail edition. I love my Wolverine. He is one of my pillars of excellence in comic. You know, I have 4 people that I really kind of are my choice to collect. Right, it's always going to be Superman #1. You know, he is the Man of Steel, and then it's Batman. He's a frickin' ninja. Nobody forget that, please. And he kicked Soup's butt, so that's all there is to it. So, look, I mean, I think we talked about a lot of good things. Thank you for sharing that X-Men #1 with us and that Hulk third appearance of Wolverine. We said it was 183?
182.
182. So Hulk 180 would be the first appearance. It's a cameo. 81 would be the first full appearance, and 82 would be the one that we saw today here.
Yep, and then following that, we go into Giant Size X-Men 1.
So the difference in price between that Hulk 181, which is the first full appearance, and the Wolverine one, which I brought here today in pristine condition, people, is night and day.
Hulk 181 sells for anywhere on a high grade, let's just use a 9.0 as an example, is around a $7,500 book today. This was a bronze book. It came out in, well, let's just go look. I'll tell you exactly what it was. So this was done in 1974 was when Hulk 181 came out.
So average sale $14,000.
Well, that's a extremely high grade. That's a 9.6 sold last month for $14,000.
To the lucky owner of the new Hulk 181, I'm so jelly.
What's interesting is this is only 1 month of sale of Hulk 181. Let me show you how liquid this book is. And what's interesting about the 3 months of data is that it is astronomical, the amount of money that people are spending on Hulk 181. Not just one sale at 14,000.
No,
there's two for 9.6.
There's 30,000. There's another 50,000 in sales. There's another 30,000 in sales. It's another 40,000 in sales. This is ridiculous, right? And so this is, the lower in grade we go, the higher the volume of transactions are, and so they're lesser dollar amounts. But there's so many moving. People are constantly buying this book.
It is liquid gold. There is no other book that has had a higher rate of return than this book.
And they say money doesn't grow on trees. Look at this.
What is crazy is I only go back 2 years in my data that I show.
Can we see that graph?
Yes. Let's look at this trend chart for this book. I mean, it is incredible, the amount of money that is spent.
Did I just see a $20,000 sale up there for a near mint?
Yes, you did. I mean, it's just over years, it adds up. Let's go down to a 9.0, which is probably the best example of this book. And I use 9.0 just because it's not quite out of everybody's price range, but it's pretty high up. 2 years ago, what's that number? I'm having a hard time seeing it.
$2,800.
$2,800. Let me show you what's really cool. You can actually sort on here, so you can see lowest it's sold for as little as $1,525, and as much as
$9,000. Look, but the key here is that there's 60 sales in this one single grade, right? 60 times in the last 2 years, somebody has spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for this Hulk 181.
And it is continuing to climb up.
And look, there's no shortage in popularity for Wolverine. Just because he's not in a movie right this second that's being released doesn't mean people forget about Wolverine. We're talking about one of the baddest dudes on the planet.
And he's been out of comic books for 2 years. He's just now returning, and that's kind of what's in the process of moving these books. Is everybody knows that Uncanny X-Men is going to be released. On top of that, The Hunt for Wolverine came out. The Return of Wolverine is out now. He's obviously going to be coming back to the X-Men. I mean, let's face it. Why wouldn't he?
Now, will he be in Dark Phoenix at all?
The movie?
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that he's going to be in that. I mean, they may have a cameo, but last I heard, Hugh Jackman hung up the claws, so I don't think he's coming back.
No more Hugh Jackman?
No, he didn't want to do it after Old Man Logan.
Did you cry?
I did. That was a heartbreaking movie. Now, again, like I said before, you always want to look at your trend chart to see exactly where we're at.
So it's not dipping. It hasn't dipped, and
it's continuing to go up. The other chart that's real important isn't just a trend chart, it's a line chart. Now you're going to say, Scott, why in the world do I care about a line chart? Well, as you see, when you start plotting all the sales on there, it starts to look like a little ripple. See how it starts to have waves up and down?
It looks like a stock chart.
Very similar to a stock chart. In fact, that's kind of the idea behind all of this, is to help you make informed decisions just like you would any other commodity.
So it looks like a stock chart.
It's very similar. In fact, that's the idea. I mean, let's face it, you wouldn't buy a stock without doing research, right?
Well, I wouldn't buy a stock without my stockbroker doing research, which is where you come into play.
Exactly. Now, unfortunately, I can't be your private stockbroker,
No, but you provide the graphs.
but I can provide you with the assets so you can make an informed decisions. Now, this is what we call a ripple chart. And basically what a ripple chart is if you plot all these sales, the line starts looking as little waves, goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So the idea when you're buying in short-term spec is to buy on the downward ripple. So you always want to watch the sales, because all sales of all commodities, not just comic books, but oil, gas, the Dow, they all have ups and downs, natural ups and downs. The market expands and contracts. When it expands, you want to sell, and when it contracts, you want to buy, because you buy low, sell high. The only way that you're going to find out that information is to actually do research and look at the trends.
You have to watch the trend.
Now, the best part about this is it will help you. Now, let's look at that trend in the last 50 sales, the last probably 3 months of sales. Look how much that book has jumped up.
That is a sharp incline.
Now, obviously, now is not a buying time for this book. This is a selling time for this book.
Okay.
If you're buying this book, you got a lot of money. Now, the question is it always going to go up? Which brings me to our next thing, which is pitfalls. Let's face it, everybody gets stuck holding the bag at some point in time.
Okay. So this is our next topic of conversation. Look, I think we've all made bad decisions in our life. Wish we could go back and buy Apple stock or hang on to that Amazon or whatever, right? Let's talk about the mistakes that people make when they're trying to guess the future of comics.
Man, that's the hardest thing to kind of explain and get your head around, because nobody knows the ceiling. Like, to me right now, I'm looking at this Hulk 181 thinking, holy crap, is there any way a 9.0 can go for over $10,000? I have a hard time believing that that'll happen, but based on historically speaking...
It's so close. The numbers don't lie.
Historically speaking, there's a great possibility that book will climb over $10,000. Movie spec is probably the hardest spec to really predict, because nobody knows that ceiling. My prime example, Black Panther. Let's face it, Fantastic Four 52, great book. Awesome.
This would be the first appearance of T'Challa?
That's correct. First appearance of Black Panther. It's a Silver Age book. It's always a great seller. But over the years, it hit, when the movie came out, it was astronomical. After the movie came, it started to dip. So if you were the poor guy that bought it when the movie came out, you're now going to be at a loss. Now, the idea is that if you hold on to it long enough, the market will come back. So that's a great what I call a rebound book.
So now, let's face it here, right? The person who's buying after the news already hit or the trend was already realized is the trend buyer. And that's not what we're about here, right? This is all about comic spec, right? How do you know when to jump out? Other than, I know we're looking at the graph, right? But when we're talking about the movie spec and the pitfall of the movie spec, how do you, like, at what point do you decide this is a flop or this didn't do what they thought it was going to do and they're going to pull the plug on it?
I always tell people to, when you buy a book, set the dollar amount that you want. There's a couple things, a couple strategies that you can use. The first that you want to do is when you buy a book, you want to say, hey, I'm buying this book today for $800. As soon as it reaches $1,300, I'm selling it. Great. So then you have to watch the sales. When it finally hits that number, you sell it. No questions asked. Don't think twice about it. The problem is you don't always hit that market. So you have to have a second option. And the second option is a timed option, which means no matter what, I'm going to sell this book on this date. I'm not going to be sitting with it any longer.
Okay.
So for me,
So you're setting your call limits.
That's exactly
That
right.
makes sense.
So my calls are real simple. They're usually, I try to make 30% on every book minimum.
Again, yeah, I know there's probably not very many stockbrokers listening to us right now, but if they are, they're like, man, I would love to get my clients 30%.
I don't know any place that you can get a better return than on comic
Dude,
books.
seriously.
So generally speaking, I buy on a rumor and I sell on the fruition. So let's just use movies because movies are really the way that it is.
Yeah, that's they're really driving the trends these days.
So I will generally buy a book based on the rumor of or the announcement of a book or a movie coming out. I wait for a lull in news when there's no marketing about that movie, and I buy the book. Again, looking for the downward ripple. As soon as I buy that movie or that book, I then set a time. Okay, no matter what, I'm selling this book at X number of dollars or 1 week prior to the movie release. Now you're probably saying, well, Scott, don't you want to get the maximum dollar? Why wouldn't you sell it after the movie comes out? Well, real simple. What if the movie sucks?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm wearing the prime example of that. I loved Man of Steel, and I really liked the Justice League and Dawn of Justice. Right? I thought they're decent movies. I felt like they gave Clark kind of a human feel. Right? Showed him with some vulnerability, and I think that's hard to do when you're talking about freaking Superman. Right? Nobody else felt the same way that I did, and they pulled the plug on him, and I'm sitting here wearing a Superman shirt knowing that there's no more Man of Steel coming.
And you know what? Before Man of Steel came out, people were buying Superman books for that. Death of Superman went up at that point in time. It was a great book, overprinted, but it was still a good book. Several other books came out. Batman versus Superman came out. Same thing. Everybody jumped on all the Batman and Superman spec. Movie came out, wasn't quite what everybody thought it was, so a lot of people got stuck holding the bag. I do find that I get a much better return on Marvel movies than I do on DC movies.
I think as a whole, I think they've traditionally performed better at the box office, but not only at the box office. I think the reviews have all been a lot more positive for the Marvel titles than for the DC.
And they plug a lot of money into their marketing. And what people don't realize is that there's a direct correlation between these comic books that are movie based and the marketing dollars that these studios put into their advertising.
I can see that.
So the more that the movie is pushed to the general public, somebody is introduced to that character, at which time they're going to want to buy that character, which is where it leads us into people buying books at an inflated price and at the wrong time, which is our biggest pitfall.
Say that again. Okay, this is the biggest pitfall.
Buying the book at the wrong time when the movie is out.
When the movie gets released, it's already too late.
At that point, you were at your peak.
I feel like that was profound.
Well,
if the movie's already out, you've already missed the boat.
That is correct.
You've already missed margin.
The margin that I'd like to make. That is correct. Now, that doesn't mean that that book won't go up in time, but the question is and how long? And
when you're looking for the sharp line, like you see there on that Hulk, you want that to happen over, like you're saying, you're saying 3 months, right? You're saying 90 days.
I try to be a short-term investor, meaning, like I said, I look for my trends. I look for a downward ripple. I purchase, and then I wait for that upward ripple to hit my number that I want. Now, again, if it doesn't hit that number, here's my time period where I'm getting out of that book. Because no offense, cash, like anything else, needs to be in my pocket. It doesn't make me any money, then I need to get out of it. And I need to use that cash to get into something that will make me money.
So look, I mean, I know you have a comic collection, but let's face the reality, right? You're not a comic book collector per se. You're really an art broker. All right, so look, I feel like we're having some really good conversation. I want to leave some more for next week, right? So what I'd like to do as we kind of roll off of this thing, I want to talk about what you're buying now, what you see as the next hot trend. I'm going to tell you what I did based on the research that I did on your site. And I'm going to tell you what I ended up trying to work on negotiating a deal on. But I want to hear what you're working on.
What I'm buying, I like to buy Silver Age books that I believe will have appearances in movies at some point in time. Right now, the big thing is Fantastic Four Annual 6, which is Annihilus' first appearance. Everybody's kind of jumping on that bandwagon because they believe that it's going to be Annihilation is the next Infinity Wars.
Infinity Wars, yeah.
So
I did read that, but I thought they already poo-pooed that.
Again, like I said, the trend now...
And there's a lot of misdirection with these things. I know they're all trying to keep it under wraps and a secret.
The trend right now is that book is week over week has gone up. And if you look, I give a nice week over week trend report of what's selling, what's not. And
so this is Fantastic Four
Annual number 6. And again, first appearance of Annihilus. And this is just this week's sales.
So, wow, this is crazy.
So, let's look at the last 12 months of this book, which, again, is really where I like to look at and see what's selling, what's the difference on there, how much have we gone up, how much have we gone down. Last year, this was a $300 book at a 9.0. Now it's selling for $1,000.
Yesterday, it sold for $1,000. The day before it sold for $1,075.
Now look, just 1 month ago when I purchased it, what was it selling for?
$765.
So as you can see...
Oh, excuse me, $875, I apologize.
$200 increase.
In a month.
In a month.
Less than a month. A month and 5 days.
I want people to be able to come to our site and say, well, God, what's trending? What's going up? I want to give them the ability to figure that out. So we've developed several reports to help people. The homepage gives you a nice little what's happening, what's hot, what's not. And these are the books that you want to be looking for. These are our top sellers. We break it down into all ages.
Now, if something's trending, is it already too late?
No. Again, you try to figure out if it's trending up. If it's continuing to trend up, you're still in good time. When the trend line goes down, you need to start selling.
Oh, you know what? I see a red arrow and a green arrow that I did not notice before. So does that mean it's trending down?
What that means is in the last 28 days, sales of that have been less than the 28 days prior to that. We call this a month-over-month report. Now, what month-over-month does is it compares sales this month to last month. And are we going up? Or are we going down? Which is important because you need to know, do I need to get into this book? Do I need to get out of this book? Then I also break it down into week over week so then you can see just this week's movers. Now, on the week over week, I only show what's trending up.
Okay.
First appearances. I actually show you what books have first appearances that are selling.
Yeah, so this was interesting. You can break down the categories of the trends from golden, silver, bronze. You can look at moderns, you can look at variants, or he actually breaks out first appearances. So this is going to tell you these are the key issues that you want to buy. You know they're going to be the most valuable book for that specific character.
And what I tell new collectors or new investors is this is the list that you really want to pay attention to. So every day this list is updated. So it's always current. Now these are the top 100 first appearances from any publisher. So you can kind of go through the list on this particular case. You know, it's your typical Hulk 181 is obviously our biggest guy. We're breaking down to giant size X-Men, the X-Men #1. But the best information for the newer people are the less expensive books, and that's further down. So you want to go look at your minor people.
And then Gambit.
I like Gambit.
I don't understand why they never made the movie with Channing Tatum, dude. So first of all, another good actor, right? But Gambit is probably one of my favorite characters. He's such a badass.
And Gambit's a great book. You look how liquid that book is.
Something about a card player that I just identify with.
So in the last month, look at how many total numbers sold of that book there is.
65.
I mean, is that incredible or what?
Now this is across all
Grades.
grades. See, this is what I was looking for earlier, right? So a total of $13,000 in the last 28 days has been generated off of this one Uncanny X-Men 266, which is the first full appearance of Gambit.
Great book. It is liquid. If you have this book, you can sell it at any time. Now, depending on what you bought it on, you might not make money, but you can sell it at any time.
And this is one of those things where if they do end up making that Channing Tatum, I mean, you're sitting on gold.
Yes, you are. And now, the other book that's really good right now that everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon for is The House of Secrets 92. Where is that? Yeah, there it is.
So the first appearance of the Swamp Thing.
Now, I know you're going, why in the world does anybody care about Swamp Thing, right? 2 weeks ago, they started announcing actors that were going to be in the new Swamp Thing movie. So guess what?
Oh.
As soon as the announcements come, the sales go up. Again, pay
So-
attention to the news.
Who did they pick? Who
You
did
know,
they have? Do we know?
Yeah, I do. Hold on, I
I'm
can
sure
tell
you have it
you.
in the news.
We do.
All right, so while you're looking for that, let me tell you what, based off of the research that I did, looking at both the news feed and the first appearances, figuring out what was in a price that I was willing to pay. So I don't know if you guys remember several years ago, there was that show on NBC called Chuck.
I like Chuck.
Right.
That was a great
So
show.
Chuck is going to be Shazam,
Yep.
right?
Levi.
And so you have Shazam number 1 and Shazam number 6, right? First appearance, or the Shazam, and then first appearance of Black Adam. These things are very reasonable right now. And first of all, anything with The Rock is going to be hot. And I mean, we're talking about books that are fairly old that are fairly reasonable to own today.
I like Shazam spec. I do think that's going to be a pretty enjoyable movie. It's a little different take on DCU.
Look, it's definitely not going to be the doom and gloom, right? Shazam was always a little more lighthearted and more comical.
So as soon as they told me that Shazam was coming out, I went out and I grabbed a whole bunch of the Danny O'Neill Shazam ones, and I made good money on those. I mean, they have gone up. They were a good buy, and if might be a little late now to get on the full train, but there's still money in that book. I mean,
Movie's not out yet.
that's right. And so
This would be the lull in between the announcement and the release date, right?
you've got it now.
So not news release first bump, but that second wave.
That's correct. Now that's a great point. There are different waves that come in with comic books specking on movies. The first is the announcement of the movie. The second is the announcement of the cast. The third is usually
Because that's going to give you the characters.
that's going to tell you who's playing what and if they're likable.
Look, Scott, man, I had a phenomenal time with you today.
I had a great time.
This was fun. We're gonna do this again, guys. This was only episode 1. I think we're gonna kind of crisp it up a little bit. Maybe we'll have a little more show and tell next time. Do a couple other things. Maybe have a couple other people sit in and kind of go over some of the larger aspects of kind of wheeling and dealing into this large market. It's phenomenal. I think when you start to fully get a grasp on the type of money that can be made and really quickly, I think it really opens a lot of people's eyes to a different possibility. Because again, right, like we started off, there's 5 million ways to make money, and you got to really love what you do. This is something I think a lot of people could really enjoy and really benefit from.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out and having me over. And more importantly, I had a great time. But everybody, be sure to check out comicspec.com. Get all your information. Make informed decisions. You will make money.
Yeah, go ahead and one more shout out to powerhits281.com to stream all of our content for us, as well as you want to give your Instagram and whatnot.
You can always reach us on the Instagram at We Buy Comics or on Facebook's We Buy Comic Books.
And you can register at comicspec.com. I do recommend that premium membership. Get the full lifetime historical sales data. allow yourself to build your portfolio and put your collection, and you can watch and see how your total value can grow. Um, I think next week we can get into a little of the more formal things that you can do with your comic collection, and treat them like heirlooms and pass them on to your future generations of yourself and your children. Right? I know that for me, these are my childhood, and so to be able to pass that down and your kids not liquidated at the first chance they get is something important to me, and so let's let's make a plan to be back next week.
I'll see you next Tuesday.
Sounds good. Talk to you guys later.